Welcome, everyone. It's tournament time. We got another edition of the Clutch Pearl podcast for y'all. I'm excited. So, without further ado, let's jump right in. Joined, as always, my good buddy Noah Carter. I'm Grant Tanner. Noah, it's championship week. It's champ week. Who is already a lock for the tournament? Who are the auto bids?
So we got Morehead State of the OVC. They broke out with the first automatic bid. Longwood out of the Big South. That was a big time upset. Drake out of the MVC. Stetson out of the A-Sun, which is their first time ever bids. We're going to have to dive into these a little bit. James Madison of the Sun Belt. And the SoCon is going on right now, so we'll give an update as that comes. It is a 3-point game with 7:30 left between East Tennessee State, the 7 seed, I believe, in that tournament, and Samford, the 1 seed. So give me your takes. What do you think about all these here so far?
So both my secondary options as an Arkansas fan, Little Rock and Arkansas State, got knocked out.
Not a good week for Arkansas basketball.
So I listened to the Longwood game. I was driving back to Springfield. And you hit on it. That was an upset, but that was more than upset. That was total domination. I mean, from start to finish, they controlled the game. There was no contest.
They went through the 1 and 2 in that conference and just curb stomped both of them.
I think they were a 5 seed, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they were. I believe they were 6 and 6 in conference, I think, is what I saw when I was watching the game.
If you don't mind, I'll keep the sound off, but I'm gonna pull up that Samford game. I'm gonna have it running as we're doing this, so I can give live updates.
Yeah, that works for me. Then I ain't got to flip back and forth between my good old Bleacher Report app and this. But is there any other takes or?
There's one more I want to dive into. We'll hit on it later a little bit. But the Missouri Valley Conference, Drake coming out of that, I think everyone kind of had Indiana State as their lock. And I personally believe Indiana State should be in either way. Now, will they get it? Will they get the benefit of the doubt from the selection committee? Probably not, because you're going to have someone like a USC or a Mississippi State or Texas A&M that's going to make a run. USC could win the Pac-12. We'll hit on that earlier too. But a team like that wins the Pac-12, gets that auto bid, that's going to take away a spot for a team like Indiana State.
Yeah, and I mean, as you mentioned, we'll touch on it later, but it's interesting. And there's some things going on too, scheduling-wise, that I'll hit on that I've been seeing points about it. It makes it really hard for the committee. So they're just going to have to say, look, does the eye test pass? For me, the eye test passes. I would much rather watch Indiana State play somebody than Michigan State, who just looks like they don't want to be there. All their star freshmen that they brought in don't play because Tom Izzo's stuck in 1925. And I would much rather see Indiana State than a Virginia, who love Tony Bennett and his squad. If they get hot from a 3-point line, can beat some people because they're so good defensively. But nobody wants to watch a team put up 25 points in an entire game in the NCAA tournament.
Wow.
I mean, that's
agree.
the epitome of brutality, as John Rothstein would say it.
And we're getting ahead of ourselves, but if I'm correct, I mean, it could have changed in the last couple of days, but Indiana State's a top 40 net team.
Yeah. I think they're number 36, maybe.
Yeah, I think it was in the 30s. But either way, at top 30 in the country, you should deserve to get in. The MVC is not a joke conference either. That's a good conference.
I mean, look at their success in the tournament recently.
We have a lot of MVC content tonight, actually.
Yeah, something I want to touch on is, how about Stetson coming out of the A-Sun? First time ever. taking it to the
Uh,
NCAA tournament.
I'll be honest with
That's
you, I kind of
awesome.
didn't even realize that was a Division I school, and then I saw the scores, and I was like, oh, good for them.
If we're being honest, the only reason I knew they were Division I is because of baseball. They are a really good baseball school.
Don't get
They've
me
had a
started
lot
on
of good
baseball. Hogs winning it all this year.
have had a lot of good players come out of Stetson for baseball. And yeah, I mean, we mentioned we'll talk about Drake. Longwood, I sent it to you earlier today. They remind me a little bit of St. Peter's from of recently, where a team that gets in only because of the conference tournament, like has no business being in the tournament, and they're either going to go in and get blown out, or they may give one seed a very tough match because I see them being a 16 seed. I mean, you don't come in going 6-6 in a conference like the Big South and get a seed beyond a 15 or a 16. So they're either given a 1 or a 2 seed, either a run for their money or an easy win, depending on how they shoot it. They've been shooting it pretty well, so we'll just have to see. And yeah, James Madison, they're going to get probably a 12 seed. They're a tough match for a 5 seed, probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I almost forgot that they did beat Michigan State beginning of the year, way back like week 1 or 2.
yeah, they
And
were
they
top
they started
25 for
they
a long
started the
time.
non-con undefeated and have only lost
Yeah,
3 games all season. Like,
yeah, they're
but
a good squad. And Morehead State, that's the
oh
last
my
one I want to
goodness,
touch on.
crazy play in this game. A blocked 3-pointer, and the point guard follows it and off the tip makes it for Samford. They're up 7 or up 3.
Oh,
Sorry, 67-64.
uh, okay. Well, back to Morehead State. I just want to give a quick run on them. Watch out for them out of the OVC. They weren't the top seed in the OVC, but I think they were the best team. There was 3 or 4 teams at the top of that conference with the same exact conference record, so tiebreakers kept them from being the 1 seed in that tournament. But they're a really good team, and they're going to be a tough, probably 14 in the tournament.
Yeah, I'm down on the OVC this year. Or their 2 best teams left and went to the MVC, and like it was pitiful. It was pitiful, honestly. Like I caught a few of their games. I mean, who wants to watch? Who wants to watch SIUE play? I don't even know on a
SEMO.
Tuesday night. SEMO, yeah, they were terrible too. I think Eastern Illinois is in that conference. I mean, just
Like I said, though, don't Morehead State's good. They got some good players. It'll be the tournament's going to be so fun this year, and we'll dive into it a little bit later. But there's just so many good mid majors with the way the transfer portal is now that like conferences like the OVC are going to get slept on. People are going to pick the MVC teams and probably the Ivy League teams, but conferences like the Big South, the ASUN, the OVC, nobody's talking about those teams, but they're going to give teams a tough test.
yeah. Um, I mean, you have it a little bit every year, and recently with the 16 seeds, I mean, you're playing with house money, and you're already confident because you shouldn't be there anyway. So, I mean,
Yeah.
nothing to lose, everything to gain. So let's move on. Let's get into the power conferences a little bit. I think all of them start this week at one point or another. Let's do the rundown. I guess Power Six. Sorry, Power Six, not Power Five. But give me the rundown. Who you have winning the conference tournaments for the Big Six?
Well, I don't know if you thought about it or not. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. I wanted to do one sleeper and one
I
pick.
had that. I had that in my notes too.
I saw it on, I think it was ESPN the other day. They did a sleeper and a pick, and I really liked that. So I'm going to give you a sleeper and a pick, at least. What did you say we're starting with?
Let's go ahead and do your pick first, and then after you do the pick, go ahead and give the sleeper. We'll just go conference by conference.
Okay, let's go Big East first. Big East, my pick to win the tournament is UConn, just because they're so good. But a sleeper in that conference, probably going to find this hard to believe. But always got to pick Marquette. I know Tyler Kolek's not there, but Oso Igudaro and Cam Jones have been playing lights out basketball. And Cam Jones has got a little chip on his shoulder because he was not recognized in the first or second team all conference, and he absolutely should have been. He probably should have been a first team all conference player.
I mean, my only argument with that is Marquette necessarily a sleeper team? I mean, they were a top 10 team a good portion of the year. I
I
mean,
think
even without Kolek.
well, why? Yeah, that's why I'm giving them a sleeper. Is the fact that probably not very many people are going to pick them because they don't have Kolek right now, and he does so much for them. But yeah, them or if you want a little deeper sleeper, give me the Providence Friars. They're playing pretty good basketball right now, so it'll be interesting to see them. All right, what's your Big East pick?
I mean, I think the obvious pick here is UConn. But I mean, in terms of sleepers, like you can just kind of throw a dart at a board, and there's 4 or 5 teams there that could upset them. But I could go with the same argument. This isn't a sleeper, but I'm going to say Creighton. That would be honestly not even a sleeper. That's probably my number 2 pick right now because of the fact that Kolek is missing from Marquette. But
Yeah,
I mean, Creighton is really really good, and I still don't feel like they're getting the recognition they deserve because they're overshadowed by the UConns and the Marquettes. I mean, this isn't that much different from the same Creighton team we had last year.
yeah. The Big East is so hard because it's so top heavy, and so I mean to pick a sleeper out of that conference is one of the few that like it's hard to do. Plain and simple. All right, I'm gonna move to the SEC. My pick is the Kentucky Wildcats. Their depth is just meant for tournament play. It really is. It also they're young and they can be upset, but I like them a lot. For my sleeper, you're really gonna like this pick. I said
I
it a
think our
couple
picks
weeks
I
ago.
think our picks are going to be pretty similar in this one.
The Arkansas Razorbacks. They're starting to figure it out offensively. They haven't closed games recently, but they've been in every single game. If they turn it around in that game one of the tournament, don't be surprised them to make a Syracuse of the Buddy Boeheim era run and win the SEC tournament.
So we're not going to have much parity here because I agree with you. I agree with you on your pick. Kentucky is playing better than most teams in the country right now. And Reed Shepard has really emerged as a leader. You would not know that kid as a freshman if you watched him play. Like if you did not follow them and you watched him, you picked him out, you'd think that's the junior senior. The way he plays. I mean, he still has his moments where he'll make a dumb turnover or two, but he's something special. I mean, just look at they played Arkansas 2 weeks ago. How many times are you going to get 102 hung on you and still win by double digits?
It's incredible.
I mean, they're bringing a guy like Shepard off the bench. They bring so many weapons off the bench. Like they don't. There's no step back from their 1 through 5, and then their 6 through 9.
Yeah, supposedly Shepard's the leading candidate to be the number one pick right now. Could you imagine? Guy doesn't even start for his college team, is the number one pick. It's
I mean, this is
incredible.
this is early 2010s Calipari esque. Like it feels that way.
I told you he's got Antigua back. I said that at our very first podcast. He's had him back for 2 years now, and you're starting to see Antigua's touch on this team. For whatever reason, those two just work well together. Antigua got some pretty good recruits at Illinois, but he was kind of a wonky fit with Underwood. Him and Calipari just make things groovy together.
Another thing I want to say about Kentucky, like if you had any doubts about it, that game on Saturday, the CBS, the national game, they went into Tennessee and withstood every run Tennessee had at the end of the game and pulled that one out on the road. I mean, this is a Final Four team. If they keep playing the way they're playing right now, there's not many teams who can stop them offensively.
Yeah, it's gonna have to. They're gonna have to run into a team like and I mean we'll obviously touch on it later with our Flying Illini segment. It's gonna have to be a team like Illinois or Iowa, somebody that scores in the 90s often to be able to run with Kentucky and beat them. Kansas, if Kansas runs into Kentucky, they will lose, and that's just one example. But like Tennessee's another one that can play with Kentucky. Like it's gonna have to be teams that can run and gun.
But I mean, Arkansas tried that. Alabama tried that. Alabama got the brakes beat off of them a couple weeks ago by Kentucky. Arkansas tried to play with them, and they ended up giving up 117 points. I mean, there's, in my opinion, there's just not a lot you can do to stop this group.
Yeah,
One of the best offensive basketball teams I've seen in a few years. I wouldn't say they're the best all around team, but offensively, you can make the argument they're the best we've seen in a long time. So for my sleeper pick is, wow, we talked a while about Kentucky. Hate that, but it is what it is. They're good. I gotta go. I gotta go with Arkansas as well. Uh, like they have found their stride offensively. I mean, they can right now they can score on anybody. It doesn't matter who you are. They can put buckets up. Caleb Battle, which throwing this out there, didn't realize that he was a little brother of one of my favorite Syracuse players ever until like 2 weeks ago. But that man has been on an incredible heater the last like 6 games. I think he set the record for most points in a 4-game stretch in the SEC by a good margin. And he's still had, I think he had 22 against Alabama. I don't remember the exact numbers.
it was a lot.
I mean, you look at the record and you could argue like they're not winning games still. I mean, you had the home loss to Vandy, then you lost at Kentucky, then you lost at Alabama. But Alabama game, you could argue bad call at the end kind of ruined that one for them, or bad no call. But I mean, they've been right there with two of the nation's better teams. Alabama's fallen off, but it was still at Alabama in March. Any road game in March in a Big Six is a tough game. I mean, I like where they're at right now. I wouldn't. You asked me 2 years ago if I would be happy with Arkansas losing 3 straight, and I would say they're in a good spot. I would have said hell no. But it's hard to argue with a team putting up 90 every game. And I do.
Couldn't agree more.
They got a favorable draw where they play Vandy first, then South Carolina. South Carolina's a good team. That's probably my next sleeper pick, but I'd rather play them than have to get a Kentucky second round.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, if you want to make a run, if you want to build some momentum, make a run, that schedule is the way to do it. All right, moving on. Let's go Pac-12.
I'm going to give a quick update on the Samford game real quick. Samford is up 6 with 1:50 left. Eastern Tennessee breaking free throws. Pac-12. I don't like the Pac-12. I'm going to put that out there. But I think your obvious pick here is Arizona as the winner. But my sleeper team, I hinted on at it earlier. I think USC is a team that you got to watch. Like they not a good season by any means, but they have a lot of young talent on that team, and all it takes is a string of a few games getting hot. Kind of the same thing with Arkansas as we were saying earlier. And I mean they beat Arizona last weekend, did they not?
Yeah.
I mean that's my sleeper pick. Don't be surprised at all if they make a little run. That's another one of those teams that could sneak in with a bad record and possibly do some damage.
All right. My sleeper and my winner are going to be the same pick. The Washington Huskies just fired Mike Hopkins. Honestly, they have a really star-studded team. Like if you look at their team, they got all kind of big-time transfers. And like for whatever reason, Hopkins would not play Paul McCahey. I expect him to get big minutes. And I mean, that dude, for whatever reason, I hated him when he was in the Big Ten at Rutgers, but that dude just makes big bucket after big bucket. And I don't see Arizona win. I see Arizona could very well fall down to the 3 line after the Pac-12 tournament because I could see them losing in the first or second round, taking a quad 3 loss, something that you can't have. So yeah, give me the Washington Huskies.
I like it. That's bold.
We'll go
But
Big 12. Or no, let's go Big 10 next. Let's save the best conference for last, Big 12. Let's go Big 10.
all righty, this is your area of expertise, so I'll let you have the last word on it. But tournament champion, I'm gonna go with Purdue just because they dominate up until the tournament. So in big tournament, the Big Ten tournament is their time to shine. Let them get their wins here, and then they'll be a first round exit in the big thing. But I'm gonna go with Purdue, and then next I'd pick Illinois, but that's not a sleeper. Like no one would be surprised if they did it. So I'm gonna go with Northwestern as my sleeper. If you would have asked me 3 or 4 weeks ago, my pick would have been Wisconsin as a sleeper, but they have fell off hard.
Oh my, awful. But hey, Purdue, and I'll touch it in mind. Purdue's got a tough road. They're going to have to go through one of Wisconsin or Northwestern, possibly both, before they even get to the final.
And I haven't, just a disclaimer, I haven't looked at the bracket yet, how it's ended up for the Big Ten. But I'm sticking with my picks. I'll give you the top. You're not going to get an easy path in any of the big conference tournaments. Like it just isn't going to happen.
But there's easier roads you can get.
Yeah.
Okay. Hear me out. If you look at the Big Ten's history, especially recent history, the 1 seed never wins. Usually never even makes it to the final. Now, disclaimer, I want the 1 seed to get to the final because everybody in the nation wants to see Illinois and Purdue play as many times as possible because those are electric matchups. Whether you're an Illinois fan, Purdue fan, or Big Ten fan, or just a basketball fan, everybody wants to see that matchup. But I think Northwestern and Wisconsin both, the way they shoot the 3, I don't care that Wisconsin has fell off. They represent a tough matchup. And I think Northwestern's a 4, Wisconsin's a 5. So Wisconsin's got a game before the double bye, but I expect it to be Northwestern, Wisconsin playing to get a date with Purdue. And I expect Purdue to go down in that game. And from there, the easy pick's my Illini. And I know I kind of don't want it to happen because when you play that many games in the Big Ten tournament, for whatever reason, historically, it doesn't bode well with the big tournament. But I have a hard time believing it's going to, if it's Illinois Purdue in the final, it's a toss up. But if Purdue gets upset, like I think it's going to happen, Illinois is my pick. My sleeper is somebody Illinois could face in the second round. Ohio State. They have been playing lights out since they fired Chris Holtmann. Which
you're on the coachless hype train right now.
And lastly, we got Big 12. That's the last one, right?
We have the ACC still.
Oh,
let's do the
ACC then.
Let's do the ACC first.
My bad. Totally forgot about the ACC. It's so irrelevant outside the top 2 teams this year.
You say that, but there will be a sleeper team that makes a little Sweet 16 run. Happens every year. So, all right, let's go. I'm going Duke. I'm going Duke with my pick. For as much garbage as we talked on Duke earlier in this season, they've turned things around a little bit. I know they lost. They lost to UNC. Was that at Duke that they lost? They lost at home
Was
this
at
weekend.
Duke. Yep. North
It's
Carolina swept.
North Carolina. North Carolina is going to be a one seed, or they should be a one seed, in my opinion. There's
I agree.
it's a tough loss. It's whatever, but I think I'm picking Duke in this. And for my sleeper team, going with those Syracuse Orange, they're right there. They kind of they didn't. No one talked about them all year, but I mean they were right there in that you have your top two, and there's kind of a drop off in the ACC, and they were right there in that middle pack. I think they're coming in at like 11-9 in conference. I mean they can beat anyone on any given night, or they can lose by 35 on any given night. But yeah, I'm going with Syracuse as the sleeper.
All right. I'm gonna go with North Carolina as my conference winner. They've ran the conference all year, and I see that to continue to happen. Duke's good, but I don't know. They just for whatever reason, I just don't think they match up well with North Carolina. RJ Davis is legit. And he's got Cormac Ryan and Baycott and the boys behind him. They surround him really well too. They surround their stars really well. It's a good squad. That's what I'm going with. My sleeper is Wake Forest. Wake Forest, led by Hunter Salas, former Gonzaga Bulldogs starter, is now leading the charge for Wake Forest. And that's a guy that's been there, done that in the postseason. I mean, say what you want about Gonzaga, but they make Sweet 16s every year. And, he's got that experience, and he's been really, really well in that lead role for Wake Forest. So give me the Wake Forest Demon Deacons.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think there's similar to what we said with the Big East. There's any number of teams there that are kind of middle of the pack teams in the ACC, which I could argue is them and the Big 12 are fighting for the worst Power Six conference right now in terms of basketball. Like neither one of them
The
are very
Big
good.
12.
Or the Pac-12. Sorry.
Yeah, the ACC is probably going to get 3 teams because the committee will probably not leave out Virginia just because the fact they don't want to give the ACC only 2 teams. But the ACC should only have Duke and North Carolina. Nobody else should make the tournament, and they should be probably top 2 or 3 seeds. But nobody else should make the tournament.
All right, let's move on. This is the hardest one in my opinion. Who do you have winning the Big 12, and who do you have as a sleeper in the Big 12?
Iowa State's my winner. Sleeper, I'm going to go with the UCF Knights. They're a team that has beaten some good teams on their home courts throughout the Big 12 here in year one. The American teams have showed out. I mean, Houston won it outright. BYU's been good. They're ranked. Well, they're not an American team, but new entrant, I should say. And UCS look good at times too. And so they're going to be my pick for sleeper because it's hard to pick a sleeper in a conference that everyone in the conference is good.
Yeah. So I like when we're different on these because there's more to talk about. But I'm gonna go with Houston winning it. I am so impressed at the lack of a drop off they had moving from the American to the Big 12. And
they should be
like,
the number 1 overall.
All credit to Kelvin Sampson there. Like that's an incredible coach. Defensively, like they're the real deal. I don't think any more needs to be said about it. If you've watched them, you understand. But for my sleeper, I'm going with BYU. I get they're a ranked team. You could argue it's not a sleeper, but they can shoot the cover off the ball when they're on. Jackson Robinson, hell of a shooter. Arkansas shouldn't have got rid of him.
You know what
And
this team reminds
they
me
have a
of?
whole slurry of Mormons up there who can shoot the ball well.
They remind me of when they had Jimmer Fredette, where they just shot, I mean, an absurd a number of threes when, that wasn't a thing. And yeah, they're just unbelievable the way they shoot the ball. They don't guard very well though,
It's
and that's what hurts them at times.
I mean it's kind of the Alabama formula. Like if you're on, it's hard to beat you if you're not missing. But then yeah, you can get beat by anybody because you're not going to play that much defense. It's really fun basketball to watch, though. If we're being honest, I love
Absolutely.
watching them. I think it's a just to hit on the Big 12 as a whole. It's such a testament to how tough of a conference it is when like your top 6 or 7 are all ranked, and then you have like BYU. I think they're are they top 20 or they fall out into the 25? I think they're number
I
20. I'm looking at it right now. But I
okay.
mean, they're only 2 games over 500 in conference. I
Yeah,
mean, that's the top 2 or 3 team in any other conference in the country.
absolutely. Uh, Something I want to throw out about the Big 12 too. It's only going to get better.
Yeah,
Arizona's coming next year. I mean, Oklahoma and Texas are leaving, but that may be addition by subtraction the way those programs are trending, which we'll get into a little bit later about Oklahoma. Uh, but yeah, you got Arizona coming in, Colorado, which is a sleeper good program out in the Pac-12. They don't get talked about a lot. Probably will make the tournament this year. Uh, Arizona State, which isn't good, hasn't been good the past couple years, but I still think Bobby Hurley's going to turn that program around. He's dealing with some tough things going on, but he's added, I believe it's Mac Irvin, to the coaching staff this year, and all of a sudden he's landing some big time Chicago recruits. Imagine that. so so yeah, he's got some good additions coming to the Big 12, and that's going to be an incredible conference next year.
it's already an incredible conference. If we're being honest, it's an embarrassment of riches. That's
That's
the
what I
term
mean.
I
It's
was
just
looking
only
for.
going to get better.
Mm-hmm. Let's move on. Uh, let's go back to mid majors for a second. Give me a team, and we talked about it a little bit earlier. Give me a team who is a mid major who you think deserves an at large bid.
Well, I mean, clearly we already touched on it. Indiana State, in my opinion, should be a lock. Um, I'm going to go in a little bit. What I didn't go into is the fact that what people leave out is they're like, well, their strength of schedule is bad, this and that. Well, that's because major teams, when they're scheduling their mid-major part of their schedule,
Nobody wants
they
to
do
play
not.
the MVC.
Nobody wants to play SIU, Bradley, Drake, Indiana State. It screws them. That's what happened to Wichita State back in the day. That almost they still got one because they went 31-0. But there was talks that if they would have lost in the regular season, they could have lost only one game and not got an automatic bid for the sole fact that people were like, well, they didn't play anybody. So then they had to go join the American, which tanked their program, might I add. But I mean, it sucks because that's such a great conference at the mid major level. I mean, just look at the impact that Damask and Jones out of Southern Illinois, which was the fourth or fifth best team in the MVC last year. I mean, look at the impacts they're having on the Big Ten this year. Top two teams.
It's a double edged sword, and just to play devil's advocate to that, like take the Big 12 for example. You have a team like TCU, who is middle to lower tier in that conference, but is 20-11. I mean, that's good. That's good enough. You could squeak in. But you're telling me that take James Madison. They've won 30 games this year. They're probably not better than TCU if we're being honest. And that's where that strength of schedule I think comes in. I mean, who are you going to give the benefit of the doubt? The person who won 20 games happened to play the top 10 teams in the country twice a week for 8 weeks, or James Madison who is playing people who are 75 plus in net rankings every game.
I mean, how do we know? Because if you look at the Big 12's non-conference strength of schedule, I mean, the ACC Big 12 Challenge, the ACC won. TCU and I think it was Iowa State. Those two teams in the Big 12 had a 200th ranked strength of schedule, but and if it wasn't for the Big 12, what would that be? 300 and something out of 300 and something teams. So how do we know outside of conference play? Because that's just like the Big Ten recently. The Big Ten got 10 plus bids the last few years, but then they go into conference or into the tournament and just get, I can't say that word, crapped on, because and part of it's getting beat up throughout the year. It happens in a big conference like that. But the other part is, who are they playing non-conference? The Big 12 or the Big 10, excuse me. Those teams, Illinois was scheduling a pretty tough non-conference already. But, Illinois actually took a slight back this year because Underwood was like, you know what? I'll sacrifice a couple seed lines to keep my guys healthier. And Purdue, look at the schedule they had. I mean, unbelievable. Houston doesn't have that.
I mean, it's such a fickle topic though, because I mean, if you're in Illinois, if you're a Purdue, if you're a Houston, on paper you're better than everybody anyway. So your strength
Yeah.
your strength of schedule is always going to be not as good as it could be, because on paper you're better than the team you're playing 95% of the time.
Yeah, that's true.
Samford is the SoCon champions, by the way. Just went final.
So what's that now? That's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 6 conference champions now already. Boy, I love conference title week.
I'm excited for next Sunday. That's the American Conference is always a pretty good championship game. I got the SEC, the Big Ten. Who else plays on Sunday right before selection?
I think the Big 12 Saturday. SEC Saturday too, right?
No, they're Sunday.
Okay, they're Sunday. ACC, I think, is Sunday. I think there's a couple mid majors Sunday. The MAC maybe Sunday, I think.
Yeah, I'm not real for certain, but that's a heck of a day to be a basketball fan. Just nothing but conference championships all day, then the selection show after.
Yeah, I might smoke me some ribs and have a good day watching some basketball.
Okay, so let's
ready to move on.
Yeah, I was gonna say let's move on. So it's the coaching carousel has already started before the season is even officially over.
Crazy.
So let's I mean, me and you, we've got a whole list here, but I want to keep it in the MVC first. I want to hit on the two bigger MVC jobs that are now open, with the firing of Brian Mullins at SIU and Dana Ford at Missouri State. We're from the area, so we're going to see a lot more than a lot of people, but there's a lot of people unhappy about the Mullins firing.
Yes, people are unhappy because they say he overachieved this year. Okay, yes, he overachieved this year. He did. He picked 9th, got 4th. But his firing is not based on this year. His firing is based on the fact that he had he did have 2 all Big Ten players on his roster in addition to the leading scorer in all of college basketball this year for most of the year. I don't think he finished. I think that guy from Detroit Mercy did. Uh, but in Xavier Johnson, and couldn't win. Couldn't win in the postseason. Couldn't win. I mean, he never finished above third in the conference in the regular season. You can't have
You,
Marcus Damask, who is arguably having the best transfer season in all the Big Ten and probably the second or third best transfer season in the entire country this year. You can't have a guy like that on your roster and not know how to utilize him. He should have put up way better offensive numbers than he did. And he put up good offensive numbers, but they weren't what they should have been.
now, do you think if he wins that UIC game that they should have won anyway? They were up like 4-6 with 30 seconds left. I don't know how they lost. I turned the game off. But if they win that game, say they go on and they lose in a quarterfinal or the final to an Indiana State, to a Drake, do you think he still has his job right now?
Only way he had his job is if he made it all the way to the conference title game. If he loses in the semifinal or prior, he's gone. And like I said, it comes down to they made that decision before the conference tournament ever started. They looked at the success and they said, I mean, with all the JUCOs around there, I mean, I know a lot of people aren't familiar with it. John A. Logan, Wabash, Vince Sims, yeah, I mean, Parkland. There's a lot of really good JUCOs
Wow,
in that
look
area,
at the major
which is
conferences.
which is
They're
a
absolutely littered with
yeah,
John A. Logan transfers. I mean, you got
yes,
Sean East at Mizzou right now. There was one
yeah,
at Kansas State last year, 2 years ago. Like,
yeah, and and I mean, they never even Mullins for whatever reason never even hardly recruited him. There's been really good players in Southern Illinois that would have been great mid-major players. One of them we played with, Dawson Yates, going to be in your wedding. Probably would have been a good player at SIU. He just needed to go there and put on some pounds. And the most they would do is give him a walk-on spot. Like Mullins, and think about it's about the fans. Like think about the fans. If you would recruit that area, they would fill that place up every night, whether they were good or not.
I'm gonna I'm not gonna get real into it because I mean, let's be honest, SIU doesn't have that great of a nationwide following. But I think a good replacement for Mullins, if you want to get bring people into the Banterra Center, you go get Smith Peters off the bench from Mizzou and bring him there. He would pack that place every night. Just
You want to
because
know
the hometown boy aspect.
you want to know
And
the honest
he's
you
not
want
a
to know
bad coach either.
you want to know my honest truth. Kyle, for whatever reason, he got the recruits, but he could not win the big game at John A. Logan. He always choked. His little brother Tyler, who played at SIU, won a national title. That's a guy you look at. But I don't know if he would be interested in coming back. But the guy SIU reportedly wants and should chase, Bruce Weber. Bring that man back to Carbondale. He won there. He knows the area. He loves the area. The only reason he left is because he got the job at Illinois, which was his dream job. And he would have never left had he not been forced to resign because they thought we needed John Gross to send us into horror land as Illinois fans. uh, but yeah, Bruce Weber, if he wants to coach again, and I don't know if he does, he's enjoying his analyst job with the Big Ten Network. That's the guy you go get. You may not have him for that long, but he could bring that program back to prominence.
Uh, just for the nostalgia aspect, I want SIU to be good so bad.
I know. I mean, just look at the history they got going on. Like And I mean, there's other guys in the area too. I know I mentioned Dawson, but I mean, Mount Vernon's had a few guys. One of them's playing at Missouri State right now.
Yeah, he had a good season too.
Yeah, and his coach just got fired too. So go ahead, give me some Dana Ford.
I've been telling you so I've gone to Missouri State. This is year 3 now. I've told you since year 1 that I needed to get rid of that dude. So I mean, I think the guys they've had at Missouri State, it's kind of the same boat as SIU. They've had some dudes, some absolute dudes, and they can't even get in the top half of the conference.
Yeah,
Like I mean, they're
honestly, Ford's done a worse job at Missouri State than Mullins did at SIU. Mullins just can't coach offense. He's a great defensive coach.
I mean, somehow they beat St. Mary's this year. I think that was their only good win. And then they hung close to West Virginia, who's a bottom feeder in the Big 12. Oh, they hung close to Indiana State one time too. But I mean, other than that, there was no excitement in the entire season. I mean, you're like even just watching the game, like their Missouri Valley tournament games, they're more physically imposing than every other team in that conference. Your star players, Chance Moore, who his options out of high school, he was going between Alabama and Arkansas. I think he might have been a 5-star. I don't quite remember. But I mean, they got some ballers, and he couldn't do anything with it. I'm pretty sure me and you could go win more games with that group of guys that he had than he did.
Yeah, it's crazy. And speaking of Mullins, his old head I shouldn't say old head coach, but he was an assistant under a guy by the name of Porter Moser at Oklahoma. Not official yet, but reportedly leaving to take over for Tony Stubblefield at DePaul. What do you think about that?
That's I mean, I was texting you about it earlier. I don't like it. I don't think that's a good move. I mean, like if that's where you want to be, that's where you want to live. I mean, by all means go for it. But in terms of the tier of school and coaching, I think he's better off at Oklahoma. Like if you
Yeah, truthfully, I've never really liked the Oklahoma fit though. He doesn't seem like he fits there.
I mean he had them boys rolling the first half of the season.
Yeah, but I don't know.
You can't even blame a person for falling off in the second half when you're playing in that conference though.
Yeah, and I get that, but a big thing, you want to know the honest truth? I think the only reason he left Loyola is to get Drew Valentine a head coach. I think he wanted to stay in Chicago, and I think that's what it boils down to. He wants to go back to Chicago. And Mullins, who only recruited Chicago when he was at SIU, I think he's going to go be his lead assistant again. And boy, those two together coaching some defense is going to be deadly at DePaul.
I just don't. I just if I was him, I wouldn't do it. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. But
Yeah, there's
then again,
two jobs in the country that you just don't take. One of them's DePaul, and the other is Vanderbilt.
Yeah, but I mean,
That's where guys go to die.
let me do a hit on Vanderbilt real quick. I mean, Stackhouse has done a great job there. This year was not very good, but I mean, they recruit kids who aren't the 5-stars because the 5-stars all have 12s on their ACT and can't get into Vanderbilt. But everything, like, well, he had Scottie Pippen's son, he had Jordan Wright, he was good, a few other guys. Anytime someone has a good player at Vanderbilt, they get poached to go somewhere else. So yeah, he makes the best of a bad situation, and like they should have got in the tournament last year. They really should have. They were good.
Yeah.
This is the first season in recent, probably the last 4, where they've just been really bad. But I'm a Stackhouse fan. I will not tolerate any Vanderbilt slander over here.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to run down the list of open jobs. First, we're going to do the mid majors outside of the MVC because we already touched on that, and they're
let me throw one more
jobs.
Thing in on Missouri State. I don't know if they have the capital to do it, but a home run hire for them would be pulling Steve Alford away from Nevada. But I don't think they
Yeah.
can afford the buyout on that.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, both of those schools, a sleeper is a guy that still wants to coach. Bob Huggins. I mean,
Yeah.
SIU is a drinking school. They can clearly handle the DUIs. I mean,
Have you ever been to Springfield? Half the city's drunk all day.
exactly my point. If either one of those schools hired Bob Huggins, it would be Rick Pitino at Iona. Like it would just be deadly.
I mean, I'd be absolutely tickled pink to just pull up to Boogie Bubbles downtown to see Bob Huggins in there throwing down.
All right. So, anyways, I'm going to give you all the mid-major jobs open first, outside of the MVC, as I mentioned. Give me which one you think is your best job. We've got uh, Loyola, Maryland, Detroit, Coastal Carolina, which has been replaced already by Justin Gray at Western Carolina. So that one opened up. Mercer, and this is another MVC one, but it's a lesser job compared to the other two, is UIC. Which one do you think is your best job?
I mean, outside of the two MVCs that we hit on earlier, I mean, probably the one that Gray took at Coastal Carolina is probably the best job. I mean,
Yeah, for
I'm not
me,
you couldn't pay me money to go coach at Detroit. Probably the same with UIC. I'm not going to
yeah.
Chicago either.
Here's one for you that I like. I like the Mercer job. You know, they've had some recent. They've pulled off an upset or two, I believe, recently in the tournament. That's a program that's it's not a bad program by any means. They've had some recent tournament appearances. It's like a 14 seed. Uh, I think that's the best job out of those. Now to the big jobs. Ohio State. I'm not going to mention DePaul because we already talked about it, but Ohio State, Washington, Louisville's not official, but it looks to be happening. Kenny Payne has agreed to his buyout, supposedly. Yeah, so Oklahoma, Washington, Ohio State, and possibly Louisville. Which one is your best job that you would want if you were a head coach?
I got to go with Washington here
All
because
right.
they're going to the Big Ten, are they not? Or are they Big
Correct.
12?
Correct. Big Ten.
I mean, that's like historically not a bad basketball school. You're making the jump to the Big Ten. It's going to be a little bit more money now, a little bit more exposure to a whole different pool of recruits that you couldn't touch before, simply because you're going to be in the Big Ten now. And I think they're in a good position. They could go get someone big if they wanted to. Hopkins was not a bad hire out of Syracuse because he was an assistant under Boeheim for a long time. That was a good hire. He did okay, but I think they're in a good position to snag somebody.
All right. I'm as much as I want to say Louisville, Kenny Payne has drove that thing so far into the ground. I don't think I can choose them. And there's so many things going on with their athletic department that you can't pick them. I'm going to go Ohio State. Chris Holtman won a lot of games there. That's a program that demands excellence. They have a great NIL pool. I just think that's a great job. It's in a basketball state in Ohio. Like, Ohio State's a good job to get.
Yeah, I really can't argue with it. I mean, I feel like Louisville and Ohio State are the obvious answers there. I tried to go a little more off the tracks, you know,
Yeah, I
try to
couldn't.
get people thinking.
I couldn't stay away from what LeBron said would be his alma mater. So,
All right, this is totally unrelated. Are you a little bit surprised that Bronny didn't try to go to Ohio State?
not at all. I think his dad pushed him to not go to Ohio State because his dad, I think, A, probably looked at that roster at Ohio State and said they're not going to compete for a Big Ten title next year. They're just not. And they already had some established guards, whereas USC was a bunch of youngsters. And face it, if Bronny didn't have that cardiac issue, probably a starter this year. And we're probably looking at a totally different USC season. They probably start out a lot better. I think he wanted him because he's so Ohio State. LeBron is. I think he wanted Bronny to do his own thing and go somewhere else.
Dude, could you imagine how they would treat him in Columbus, Ohio? Though he would be a god. He could do whatever he wanted at that
Yeah,
place.
I think that's why he didn't want to go though. Bryce. I totally see Bryce going to Ohio State. He seems like he lives for the spotlight. Bronny, on the other hand, he's a passer. He would much rather just kind of, hide in his dad's shadow rather than use his dad's shadow, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
All
So
right, you ready? Give me your hog heaven.
So we touched on it a little bit earlier. I mean, the record the last couple of weeks is not there, but I'm feeling pretty good going into the SEC tournament this week. Like we hit on it. They found their groove, which is scoring the ball. This isn't the same physically imposing defensive team that's just going to wear you down for 40 minutes like we've had the last 4 years under Musselman, I guess. But like this team can put 100 on your head any given night right now, especially for the way Caleb Battle's been playing. The dude shoots like 40 free throws a game. It's insane. He's always at the free throw line. But we both picked him as a sleeper, and I wouldn't sleep on the Hogs. I got a good feeling that might go away Thursday, but I got a feeling.
And so, what's that background for?
Well, this was a picture taken in Mexico, and I picked it because it's probably, for being honest, that's where the Arkansas Razorbacks men's basketball team is going to be hanging out here in about a week.
Yeah, that's. I had to bring that up since we're in the hog heaven segment. All right, I'm going to jump to the Flying Illini side
Yeah,
of
you
this.
you probably have a more positive outlook on things right now than I do.
Yeah, I do. The last couple games, we're finally showing the defense that we showed at the beginning of the year. Granted, that's not a good defense, but it doesn't have to be when you score 90 a game. I mean, let's just face it. If you play serviceable defense with that offense that Illinois has, I mean, they run an NBA style offense, as Fred Hoiberg said it. And I mean, he would know, coached in the NBA for a lot of years with the Bulls. And I mean, when you have the mask shooting it the way he is and just going down on people, you have Shannon just in a flash, a blink of an eye, can put up 20 because he's so fast in transition. At one time, I think I counted 5 steps and he went coast to coast for a layup. It was crazy. And, Dane Danger and Amani Hansberry, those guys have been the Illinois key lately defensively because, I mean, let's face it, Hawkins, this is a team that's kind of like last year's Miami squad. They're meant for the tournament. They're not really meant to play in the Big Ten. Like they needed a big man to kind of get them through the Big Ten. And finally, late Danger and Hansberry have been helping them off the bench to face a team like Purdue, like an Iowa. So a lot to like with Flying Illini country.
Oh yeah. What seed line do you think they're going to get?
I think they're going to get the first 4 seed, unless they win the Big Ten tournament, and that includes a win over Purdue. For them to jump up to the 3 line, they're going to need to face Purdue in the title game and win. If not, I think they stay at a 4, and it'll probably be 1 or 2, like the 1 or 2 of the 4s. I think them and Auburn will get the first 2 4 seeds.
You know what's tough about the 4 seed? Coming from someone whose team's been a 4 seed the last 2 years, you're probably going to have to play number 1 on your second game.
It would
or
be
your third game. Third game. Yeah.
And that's the thing. If we draw Houston, I do not like that matchup at all.
Houston's the perfect antidote to Illinois' offense right now. Like,
Yes, that's the only team that can stop them out of the ones. I In the postseason when we have SEC referees, not Big Ten referees, I like our chances against Purdue. I really do because Edie get called for 7 fouls in 3 minutes.
yeah, you're the only person I've ever heard who says they like SEC officials.
It's because they call a lot of fouls, which is something I'm not used to in the Big Ten. But anyways, to go on, if Tennessee gets it, we lost to them at Tennessee, but that was where the SEC officials kind of hurt us, I will say. And I'm not blaming it on the officials because we struggled down
Yeah.
the stretch, and that could hurt us again. But yeah, I like our chances if we play Tennessee again. I like our chances if we play Purdue again. Don't like our chances against Houston or UConn. So hopefully we can avoid them.
If you're going to watch an SEC game, you got to block out 4 hours of your schedule because both teams are going to be in the bonus by the 13-minute mark of the first half. So.
Yeah. And really that plays to Illinois' advantage. And that's why Kentucky has been so good in the SEC and why they're my pick in the SEC tournament. Because those teams go 9-10 guys deep. And with SEC officials, that's how you got to do
Yeah.
it.
Okay, so let's move on. Our final segment. I got to know what in the recent weeks has made you clutch your pearls.
Give me Jalen Blackman of the Stetson Hatters with 43 points. I mean, here it was. You ready? Let's see if I can get it up here. There it is. Over and over and over again. I mean, he just absolutely lit it up to send them to their first ever NCAA tournament. Gotta love it for the Hatters, which, by the way, is a horrible mascot name.
So I gotta take it to a less positive note because this just it made me clutch my pearls, honestly, but in a bad way. So I don't know if you caught the women's SEC championship game. There was like 8 players ejected, something crazy. There was a fight. And I mean, it's whatever, it happens. You're competing. So Don Staley, South Carolina's coach, comes out after the game, all class, basically says, like, heat of the moment. It's nothing against anyone personally. Shouldn't have happened. I'm sorry. That's what you should do if you're a coach. Then we have Kim Mulkey from LSU, which I'm going to read this entire quote from her because, like, it's something else. She says, quote, "It's ugly. It's not good. No one wants to be a part of that. But I'll tell you this. I wish you would have pushed Angel Reese. If you're 6'8", don't push somebody that little. That was uncalled for, in my opinion. Let those 2 girls who were jawing, let them go at it," end quote. How are you going to say something right, your first sentence, and then the next sentence completely turn around and become a trashy hood rat within 5 seconds of one another? I mean, that's just classless, in my opinion. Not an LSU women's basketball fan. And that quote, that whole interview with her made me clutch my pearls. Boo on you, Kim Mulkey.
Yeah, it was something, that's for sure. I knew that she had said something like classless, because of Twitter, but I didn't know what she said. Like, I caught the game, and when the fight broke out, I was like, I can't watch this anymore. I was like, I'm here to watch basketball, not a fight.
And Shannon Sharp went off on her. I loved it.
All right. Well, I don't have anything else. You have anything else?
Give me a prayer. Arkansas plays Wednesday.
All right. Well, everybody give Grant a prayer because his Razorbacks are about to go down.
You're probably not even wrong.
So, another episode sponsored by Caleb Moss and Media. This was our conference tournament episode. And hopefully we'll be back on Selection Sunday or the Monday after to get after it a little bit about the NCAA tournament. We're excited for that. We'll have our picks, maybe our brackets. We'll be releasing a Clutch Pearl podcast bracket that you can join on ESPN. I'm Noah Carter, and he's Grant Tanner, and we'll be back soon.